This is TWiT.
Well, Chad and I waited in line, so did Jammer B, so did, who else was in the line?
There was Greg.
Greg was
Jeff
there.
Needles was there.
Needles was there. We had a big group. Glenn was there too, yeah. Everybody wanted the new iPhone, and it was interesting when we canvassed our staff, everybody wanted the big new iPhone.
Absolutely.
So this is it. This is the 6 and the 6 Plus. These are the new iPhones from Apple, available for sale at Apple stores, but at also all the carriers in the U.S., Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and a few of the smaller carriers as well. You'll also find it internationally now in, I think, 13 countries or maybe even more, and more all the time, soon to be China and all over the world. These are easily the hottest, most awaited phones in the U.S., and you could tell by those long, long lines. So my review, having now, I admittedly only got it on Friday. I didn't get an advance copy like some people. First of all, I think even if you look on TV, this is the iPhone 6, the 4.7-inch screen. It's so thin and so beautiful. These are easily the most elegant, beautiful phones Apple's ever made, and I think probably the most elegant and beautiful phones on the market today. They've really done a stellar job. We've heard, I mean, they're going to be fragile. All smartphones are fragile. This is not Sapphire. We think it's probably Gorilla Glass 3, and yes, they do crack. We've seen people crack them already, but what phone doesn't? We've even seen reports that some of them, probably more likely the big 6 Plus, will bend in your pocket. Well, are you surprised? Look at that. It's so thin. So you're going to want to be careful with these. Probably get an OtterBox case if you're a fumble fingers. But that's always been true of iPhones, and it's no less true now. iFixit does report that these are a little bit more fixable, that the screen comes off a little bit more easily. So there will be an aftermarket third-party screen replacement, people and so forth. As you would expect, it is, the kind of the state-of-the-art in iOS. The fingerprint reader, the Touch ID as Apple calls it, works spectacularly well. I've trained it, for instance, so that I can use the iPhone in my right hand and just tap the thumbprint ID with my thumb, the Touch ID with my thumb, and it opens up right away. You can also use it to make Apple Store purchases and iTunes Store purchases. And as you know, with Apple Pay, their electronic tap-to-pay, soon you'll be able to use the fingerprint to actually make purchases in the store because, yes, Apple has finally included NFC, the near-field communication chips in their phone. That's a chip that's been in many other phones, but now that Apple's doing it, I expect to see it in use more often. Apple Pay will debut next month. It's not available, and you really can't use the NFC chip right now for anything else. Best cameras on the market. In fact, we're starting to see reviews come in. I've seen a lot of the reviews, and I've seen a lot of the images, and yep, Apple's done it again. Still 8 megapixels, but they've improved the quality of the camera. The software behind it is superb. The dual tone flash means that flashes look better because they're color balanced for the environment you're in. And you may not even need the flash. Both phones do a lot of trickery to get excellent low light photography, and especially the iPhone 6 Plus, which has an optic image stabilizer in it. Apple also made a big deal about the phase focusing built into the sensor chip on this phone, and indeed, it focuses very quickly. The super slow-mo video is superb and gorgeous. So they've really made a phone with a camera that is second to none. In fact, I think I would say this is still the best camera on the market today. That's pretty impressive considering Apple hasn't upped the number of pixels, but they've made major improvements in so many areas that this is just a fantastic camera, despite the immense amount of competition for that title. iOS 8 has some very nice new features I think you'll like a lot, including the new notification system. Now, of course, if you have an older iPhone, you can still get iOS 8 on your 5S or your 5 or even your 4S, but it really sings on this, partly because this phone has the new A8 chip. Here's Kevin Rose's slow-mo of a Tony Hawk event. This is the 240 frames per second slow-mo, so that is what, 1/4 speed.
Yeah.
And it just is fantastic. Play that again, Brian. It starts at full speed and then slows down, although
This is mind-blowing.
it's done in metadata, so you can actually edit it and have any portion of the entire video be slow-mo or not. So that's really nice after the fact control. Apple's iOS 8 means also it's easier to share videos and pictures with people. They've added additional sharing features. I think they've really done a nice job. Look at that. That is spectacular. And that's with a phone. That's just
that blows my mind. I mean, I remember trying to get like 60 frames high speed off of like actual film cameras, and
remember,
it's so difficult.
It's a very competitive market. Samsung phones have super slow-mo. There are a lot of phones out there with these kinds of capabilities. This is, in many cases, Apple's just playing catch-up with the market today. Yet it's really well done. The 6 Plus, which is a 5.5-inch screen, has some additional features specifically for this big screen. And I have to say, if you've been using an iPhone, you're going to be a little bit challenged by the size. This is not just a little jump, this is a massive jump. Let me open Apple's Mail program and show you. For instance, as you turn the phone on its side, you're able to, let's cancel out on this so you can see, you're able to go from looking at a message full screen to looking at much more like a desktop or an iPad interface where a list of messages is on the left and the message itself is on the right. This is great. And it's not just Mail, it's throughout the iPhone. Now, of course, Apple has updated many of its programs to take advantage of this. Others have not. In fact, one negative you'll see on both phones immediately is Google and other applications have not been updated for the new screen resolutions. That means they're scaled. Apple does a good job with scaling. Nevertheless, it looks a little weird. The text is bigger than you probably would want it to be. I expect every company, though, will be quickly working to update their apps to work better with iOS. All right, let me run through the pros and cons, and I have them right here. Let me just switch over to my sheet. It is, I would say, and this is totally subjective, the most beautiful smartphone ever made. I mean, if you take a look at it, you may disagree, but you can't disagree that it is absolutely gorgeous. The best cameras on a phone, it's not just me, DxO and others have agreed. Crisp, brilliant, responsive touch screens. These are not unique. In fact, we think that the touch screen on the 6 Plus is the exact same part as on the OnePlus One. It's certainly exactly the same size, has many of the same features, but it looks good, and Apple as always does a little bit extra to make their stuff just look a little bit better. You got to admire Apple's commitment to security and privacy, and that's something Apple is doing with iOS 8 and across the board, and something they're going to have to do because, of course, if we start using these for electronic payments, for recording health, we're going to care a lot about privacy and security on this phone. There's nobody better when it comes to privacy and security than Apple, and Apple has begun to really tout that as a feature, and I believe that that's something they should tout. I think it's something they do particularly well. So you get that kind of built in to all of the iPhones, in fact, into many iOS 8 devices, but the hardware on this allows things to be even more secure. The fingerprint solution works fabulous, better than Samsung's, better than anybody's. The Apple ecosystem itself is going to be an advantage as Apple Pay comes to the front as we see more HomeKit and HealthKit tools. That'll make for a better user experience. I like messages. I don't know if you've used messages. If most of your friends and family are in iOS, you'll love messages. It's easy to send now, not just text messages, but audio, pictures. It's really a very elegant solution. Works best when you're going iOS to iOS, however, and there are still issues moving back and forth from iOS to Android. If you're a Macintosh user, a computer user, you'll love the continuity and handoff features that will allow you to use your new iPhone to make phone calls on your desktop computer, to send messages from your desktop computer and respond to them. And I have to say, finally, we've got screen sizes that are comparable with the rest of the world. I like a big screen, and I'm really glad to have a screen with a little bit more real estate. Although a funny thing happened to me on the way to the Apple store after I started playing with these. I really feel for most Apple users who are used to the smaller 4-inch screens or less, the iPhone 6, the 4.7, even this is going to feel a little big. This is the phone you should get. 4.7 inches is exactly the right size. I really thought I was going to want a bigger phone, and I am still drawn kind of inexorably towards the 4.7-inch phone. It just feels good in the hand. If you're already using an iPhone, this 5.5-inch screen is going to be such a big jump. I'd recommend you at least strongly consider the iPhone 6 and not the iPhone 6 Plus.
And I think you were making a really good point on Mac Break Weekly that the 6 Plus, all it does is stretch your apps even larger.
It's great for people with poor eyesight.
Right, but
it's not like you get to use that real estate except for the sideways mode.
It's not like Android where the app will refit and you'll maybe get an extra row of icons or an extra...
That may change. I mean, people can make their apps, their apps will know which phone they're on, and people may start taking advantage of the extra real estate. But for right now, it's just bigger. not necessarily better.
More difficult to use, basically.
And harder to use with one hand, of course. I don't use my phone with one hand. I'm used to using two hands now because of the big phones I've been using. But one-handed iPhone users, stick with the iPhone 6. You're not going to want to go to the Plus. The A8 processor, by the way, getting great results in benchmarks, among the fastest processors on the market today. The GPU also very good. And Apple's new Metal software, kind of DirectX for the iPhone, means games really sing on this. This is going to be a great platform, and that might be one reason to get the bigger phone. If you're a gamer, the 6 Plus will be a fantastic platform, as the iPad has been up to now. However, there are some negatives. Nobody's perfect in this world. It is a closed ecosystem. That's a pro and a con. The closed ecosystem means Apple controls it more tightly. They can ensure your privacy and security, but it means you can't do as many things as you want. And in many cases, Apple's kind of a nanny. Lots of pop-ups and warnings. You're being followed. There's location turned on, stuff like that. Some people will be reassured by that. I found that a little bit annoying. It's not quite as flexible as the Android ecosystem. And these are, I have to say, the most expensive phones on the planet, except for the Virtu diamond-encrusted phones. For a stock smartphone, top-of-the-line 6 Plus with 128 gigs of RAM, $949. That's more than most computers cost these days. It's a very expensive phone. And that will set some people back on their heels a little bit, too. And finally, fewer customization choices. Really, Apple's very clear that this is the screen you're going to see when you launch. There's no third-party launchers available. They've only recently added third-party keyboards. Basically, when you go with iPhone, when you go with any Apple product, it's Apple's way or the highway. You only get 3 different colors. You can get this slate gray back, there's a gold back, and there's a silver back. The front can only be black or white, and the black only goes with space gray, the white with the other 2 options. It's kind of like Henry Ford, who said you can get a Model T in any color you want as long as it's black. Apple really doesn't like to make too many different kinds of phones. That will be probably the final negative is they're hard to get. Good luck finding them. That will ease up over time. But the success of Apple's iPhone, it really means you do have to end up, in many cases, waiting in line, waiting to get your phone. A lot of people who ordered online will be getting their phone around Thanksgiving time. Yeah, that's a long delay. And if you're in China, well, you're just going to have to send somebody to the States to get in line for you because they're not available in China yet. So pros and cons, there you have it. Obviously, I'm going to give the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus a strong buy. These are Apple's catch-up products that make them a totally strong competitor in the phone marketplace. They're not necessarily better in every respect than what's out there from Android and even Microsoft. They are better in some respects, in many respects. My recommendation, if you're choosing a smartphone, is to try them all and find the one that fits your needs best. But boy, if you're an iPhone user, you're going to be very happy when that new iPhone comes in the mail because these things are gorgeous. They're beautiful. And again, consider the smaller one if you're not absolutely sure you can use that 5.5 inches of real estate.